Imagine you and your wife are offered a hefty sum to participate in a 30-day marriage study. There's a catch: you are not actually married. As you both adjust to your luxurious, isolated home, things take a disturbing turn. Your wife witnesses a terrifying scene, and suspicions cloud your relationship. Tom says that on their wedding day, she self-deleted in front of the camera. The whole event, which took place a few months ago, is then told by him. Tom and Eve saw an advertisement for a research project from the Millennium Project, a firm looking to recruit married couples. The 30-day period will be extended, and $50,000 will be paid. Eve makes the point that Tom would have plenty of time to complete his book, and that the money would finally enable them to begin a life together. They consent to lying since they aren't really married. In order to be married to Eve when the experiment is done, Tom says he has purchased a ring before they meet with the scientists for an interview. Tom claims that Eve won his heart on the day she accepted and saw that the ring was etched with the numerals 9/23. The director then meets with the couple and says that he is researching the honeymoon phase and the reasons why the initial feeling gradually wanes. Statistically speaking, more marriages will fail, he adds, since only certain kinds of connections may outlive biological ones. The director was once married, but sadly, his wife passed away when she was a little girl. Her passing served as his inspiration for this research. When Tom and Eve are questioned individually, they pretend to be married for a month. Although there is a glaring difference in their responses, they still express affection for one another. All of the couple selected for the research meet at the facility at a later date. Though he is still certain he wants to undertake this, Tom is obviously concerned and says they should have a safe word in case one of them decides to end the experiment at any point. Eve concurs, and they decide to use 9/23 as a safe word. The experiment is then declared to have begun by the director, and the couples are divided by having the men and women exit via separate doors. Eve is then given an injection that causes her to nod out. She awakens to find herself in bed with Tom, both of them dressed in the company-issued attire. She wakes Tom up as well, and the two of them go around the home together, discovering to their amazement that the living room has a hologram. This is the Mediator, who permits a scientist to follow up with them without distorting the study's findings. Every time they talk about the event, she asks them to put on a set of headphones that capture their brainwaves. The Mediator assures them she may be contacted at any moment via the gadget on the table and vanishes after testing it with a simple query. The pair may now go about the home as they like. In the living area, they locate an antique record player and turn on some music for singing and dancing. When they search the kitchen, they discover a cutting-edge dispenser that delivers whatever meal or beverage they want. They also open the one bag they were permitted to carry, which contains presents they purchased since they would be spending Christmas at home. Along with Tom's notepad, so he may continue writing on his manuscript, Eve also sent cookies that had been spiked with uppers. Although there are cameras all around the place, their phones tragically don't have signal inside the home. Tom may work in peace in a very good office as well. For amusement, they ask the dispenser for a number of items in the evening. After that, they light the fireplace and bring champagne to the sofa, so they can watch a movie on the coffee table's retractable screen. When it's time to get messy, they go to the bedroom and cover the camera with their clothing. Tom acts more aggressively than normal once they start going after Eve urges him to use protection. When they're done, Tom apologizes and gives Eve some comfort since she seems rather riled. The couple is watching a movie on day 3 when the main character delivers birth. Tom suggests they should have a kid after seeing the image on the screen, but Eve quickly says no, believing they aren't ready to be parents. They choose to sample the drugged cookies on day 11. Even though Tom has tasted it previously, he is cautious when she chews one right away. Eve leaves to get some drinks to help him unwind, and when she returns, she discovers Tom chewing. The pair decides to play hide and seek after the effect takes effect, and Eve randomly selects a room and pushes the door so hard that she tears a hole in the wall. After spending some time hiding behind the crates, she eventually comes out, and Tom jump scares her. After that, it's Tom's time to conceal. As Eve counts, she hears an odd noise and then someone calling for assistance. As she rushes to the door, she is horrified to discover another project wife, sobbing and pleading for admission because her husband is attempting to murder her. Eve yells for assistance as she begins to wave at the camera after failing to unlock the door. The husband arrives at that same time, bangs the woman's skull against the door, and takes the corpse away. The passengers had left by the time Tom gets to the entryway. When they want to speak with the director, she materializes as a hologram who informs Eve, in tears, that they have checked the system and everything is ok for the other couples. Even after that, he shows her the video, which has Eve in front of the lens, but no one outside. Tom acknowledges to the director that they had taken some uppers, and they determine that this is what led to the hallucination. Eve, nevertheless, still believes it to be genuine, so she can't sleep that night. Eve takes some medication for her headache the next day and discards the leftover cookies. Eve rejects Tom's request for some extracurricular activities and tells him to focus on his book instead. After that, Tom stops writing and Eve starts working on her designs at the table. Instead, he disregards Eve's desire for quiet and brings up the topic of having kids once again. She loses it and begins listing all the problems they need to resolve in order to live fulfilling lives before considering having children, such as the fact that he wants to support himself via his writing, but hasn't produced any since the study began. Eve assures him that they may discuss having a family when he completes his book. Tom heads to the workplace to write, full of optimism. Eve stops by Tom's workplace a little while later to show him the book cover she created. Tom acknowledges he hasn't improved, which surprises Eve, since he often couldn't go more than a day without writing. When he begins to question if this is the right path for him to take, Eve tells him not to give up on his ambition and says she fell in love with his passion. Eve then heads to bed, but before she gets there, she hears someone remark, "Don't trust Tom." Tom surprises her as she turns back and invites her to spend the night being mischievous. But now that she's feeling strange, Eve chooses to go to bed. Eve is going at some of their photos on day 14 when Tom says he had a great time on the trip. Eve clarifies, however, that it was just a design exercise and that she used Photoshop to include him. Since she hasn't been wanting to have sex recently, Tom worries whether she's alright. Eve reassures him that she's simply not in the mood. Eve contacts the mediator in the evening after Tom has gone to bed, since it was her voice that warned her not to put her confidence in Tom. The mediator acknowledges that, based on the files, she hadn't anticipated the relationship to last beyond the first week, and that Tom isn't the guy Eve believes him to be. The call terminates before the mediator has a chance to continue. Eve can't sleep that night, so she heads to the office to see what Tom has written so far. But she can't help but be drawn to the dedication, which expresses his love for her. When Tom discovers her, Eve chooses to question him if he's playing a joke on her, disclosing the words of the mediator. Inquiring further, she notes that he used to be the one suffering from severe hangovers after his cookie consumption. Tom becomes enraged and implies that Eve shouldn't be with him by accusing her of not trusting him. A helpless Eve affirms that she does trust him, but that since they moved into the home, something has felt strange, and the mediator has made it worse. Eve hugs Tom and apologizes after he tells her that it must be part of the test to keep them apart and that he would never lie to her. Eve makes the decision to maintain her happier outlook and begins decking the home for Christmas from that point on. Eve just hides the holographic light to remove the mediator from their life when she attempts to speak with them. She discovers she's gained some weight when she next looks in the mirror. Eve rewards Tom with some mischievous time in front of the fireplace after she finishes decorating, as he has been spending a lot of time writing in his office. But as soon as he plants a kiss on her, she shoves him away and begs him to stop, claiming that his kisses are different. She bites Tom's lip, forcing him to shove her to the ground as a way of proving her wrong. Tom will not stop kissing her. Tom attempts to persuade Eve that everything is okay for the next 3 days, but she doesn't buy it. By day 20, every one of her drawings has become eerily spooky. Eve hears a noise coming from the wall hole that night, so she wakes up and peers through it to see Tom chatting to the mediator. Tom informs her that Eve is unstable and doesn't trust anybody, so he is asking for assistance. The mediator informs her that a little sedative will be prescribed. Tom claims that the mediator is the one who called, but Eve objects, stating that she never heard any ringing and that Tom isn't wearing the headset. Enraged, Eve dashes to the living room. She also discovers the sedative in the dispenser and throws it at the mediator, accusing him of treating her like a crazy person when she says she hasn't been checking in every day. Eve walks out in a fury after informing Tom that the mediator is playing them. Eve becomes ill that evening and rushes to the restroom to urinate in the toilet. Eve informs Tom she's pregnant over the phone after realizing she's been gaining weight and urinating often. While Tom is ecstatic, Eve is terrified and wants to go so they can discuss their alternatives. Tom becomes enraged at the thought of ending the pregnancy, and he begins disparaging Eve, calling her a lousy mother and pleading with her to conceal her pitiful misery for the sake of Christmas. Eve gives in out of fear. Gifts are exchanged by the pair on day 25. Tom is thrilled to get a Blu-ray movie, but Eve reveals that he despises the movie, which she joked about buying. Eve receives a curling iron, which she finds annoying. She gets irritated and dumps it in the garbage after trying it out in the restroom. She then sits down with Tom on the sofa, whereupon he criticizes her lack of effort. Eve interrupts him by inquiring about his book, even though he also wants to speak about the baby. Eve claims that Tom isn't behaving like himself during the ensuing dispute, but Tom just walks away to buy more popcorn. Eve calls the mediator to beg for assistance, but the mediator informs her that she is only allowed to watch and not to become involved. Eve breaks down in tears and confesses that she is 6 months pregnant despite not being married. The mediator just tells her that Tom is a liar and walks away. When Eve opens Tom's notebook in a desperate attempt to find answers, she is shocked to see that the only pages that are new are the ones he wrote before moving into the home. The whole list of baby names that he has been writing about here is not his tale. When Eve approaches Tom, he claims that Eve has been putting too much pressure on him, which has prevented him from writing. Eve hurls the notepad at him out of rage before walking away. Later, while they're in the bathroom, Eve discovers all the protection they've been using and kicks the trash can in fury. She is shocked to see that they are all leaking, and upon inspecting the wrap, she finds that Tom purposefully made holes in it. She gets an idea when she notices the curling iron as well. Eve asks Tom to take a bath with her a little while later. As they play Never Have I Ever, she can't stop touching his wine glass, and Tom misinterprets Eve when she states they've never been married. She repeatedly brings up 9/23 and acknowledges that she is aware of his coercion to get her pregnant, but Tom doesn't seem to understand it. When Tom arrives to put Eve to bed, Eve, upset, snatches a knife from the kitchen and conceals it. Eve tries to go to sleep in the bedroom by hiding the knife beneath the pillow, but Tom touches her despite her repeated attempts to brush his hands away. Eve stabs Tom in the arm with the knife as she tries to flee, reminding him that they are married and she has to carry out her responsibilities as a wife. Tom, enraged, snatches her hair and tosses her onto the bed, but Eve kicks him away and flees into the bathroom, shutting the door behind her. She then reaches for the curling iron that has been warming up and puts it into her intimate region. She can't get deep enough to kill the baby as she desired, and the agony is excruciating. Tom, who is enraged, smashes the glass on the door and charges inside, dropping the iron into the bathtub and cutting the electricity. Then he makes a threat to murder Eve if she attempts to harm the child ever again. The director seems to be ending their stay as soon as the power is restored, since it is clear that they are failing. The director lets them remain as long as Eve takes her sedatives, as she's terrified of Tom's response, and Eve tells him she's okay. The director responds that the mediator was dismissed when Eve inquires about her whereabouts. Subsequently, Tom gives Eve a surprise supper, but he forbids her from using a knife to cut her meal. The kitchen knives were really all concealed. Eve wonders, where's the real Tom, as it's clear that this isn't him after he makes her dance with him. Eve seizes the opportunity to repeatedly stab Tom with a fork after he dismisses her query and gives her a kiss. Eve snatches the knife from Tom's food as he falls and dashes to the hole in the wall, which she widens so she can enter. Eve enters the research building via a door after passing through a small hallway. She goes into a random room when she hears someone approaching and discovers a group of identical-looking sleeping ladies. The lady in the bed is categorized as a clone, and all of the couples from the study are displayed under memory mapping on large displays. In addition, a butterfly that is well known for having access to genetic memory is soaring around. Guards and the director discover Eve at that point, and the director acknowledges that he cloned Tom and is using the actual one to complete filling in the blanks in the clone's memories. Since brain mapping was previously unfeasible, he began this experiment to hone the technology while working with many clones simultaneously. When the director won't let Eve see the real Tom, she wakes up one of the ladies and holds her captive with a knife. As it happens, the director cloned his wife and is honing the process to bring her back permanently. Additionally, he has been acting as the mediator by mapping her brain. The guards drop their guns in response to Eve's threats and hurl one at her before one runs to get Tom. Eve informs the director that she is a clone when she discovers that the director is trying to communicate to his wife without realizing it. The director's wife, brokenhearted, tells him she no longer loves him. The guard then reappears with Tom, who at last gets back together with Eve. Eve shoots the director, the wife clone, and every guard as they embrace. The pair then makes an attempt to flee, but as they approach the hallway, they discover another Tom, and both men accuse the other of being the clone. Eve knows something is off as she kisses the person next to her, since they are both bleeding. She takes a step back, and the two Toms say 9/23 and begin a litany of all they know about her. Eve threatens to murder the baby because she is unsure about whom to shoot. Eve kills the Tom who told her no after one Tom advises her to go ahead and the other says she shouldn't. Eve begins bleeding down there all of a sudden, and Tom needs to help her out. Eve loses the baby, but the pair manages to flee. They tie the knot joyously on September 23. They begin to be amorous over the honeymoon, but Eve becomes alarmed when she sees the wrap and realizes this one was also pricked. She attempts to push Tom away, but he grabs her by the throat, strangling her till she dies, all the while declaring his love for her. Upon realizing his actions, Tom attempts, but is unable, to do CPR. He uses some rope to make it seem as if she did it to herself in order to hide his crime. Rewinding to the present, Tom sobs as he claims he doesn't understand Eve's motivation for doing it since he was the ideal spouse.